With you guys today. I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's no CBA deal. The players don't want to agree to what the owners are proposing. Perfect. Grab Asia Wilson, grab Sabrina, grab Sophie, grab the superstar, the main attraction, Caitlin Clark, and let's start this.
Some are proposing a radical solution. Keep just 5 players and let everyone else go. This isn't the rant of a frustrated fan. It's an actual idea being discussed as the WNBA faces its first serious CBA crisis since Caitlin Clark reshaped the landscape. What makes this even more striking is that there might be some logic to it. Right now, the league is in a standstill, free agency is frozen, and teams can't make any moves. Behind this paralysis lies a deeper, fundamental disagreement over what the league is truly worth.
Wouldn't notice the difference. Nobody would say to themselves, oh, wow, the talent has really dropped off this year. Nobody's going to be saying that. In fact, they'll be saying, wow, it's real calm this season. There's not so much complaining and whining going on this season. Start fresh with players that deserve money and with players that can push.
Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to hear. The WNBA has been losing money for 25 years. Not breaking even, not just struggling, but actively hemorrhaging cash, entirely subsidized by the NBA. Then Caitlin Clark arrived in April 2024, and for the first time in league history, owners saw real revenue potential. They came to the negotiating table with what they considered a generous offer, minimum salaries jumping from $60,000 to $250,000, average salaries exceeding $500,000, maximum contracts hitting 7 figures, and revenue sharing rising from 9% to 15%. The players' union rejected it, demanding 30% revenue sharing before expenses. And that's exactly where the whole negotiation collapses.
Paid what they think that they're owed. In comes Caitlin Clark. Owners actually see someone that can make them dollar signs and they say, you know what? We'll compromise with you guys. We'll give $1 million contracts to some max players. Average salaries of over $500,000, minimum salaries $250,000. We're willing to compromise. But the players believe that they're entitled to more money. The old guard fans have brainwashed them into thinking that they are entitled.
In the current WNBA negotiations, the key player representatives are Breanna Stewart and Nanika Agwick, both of whom are heavily invested in Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league that launched in January 2025. Stewart has openly described the challenge of balancing WNBA responsibilities with running Unrivaled operations as overwhelming, juggling calls, emails, and business decisions on top of playing games. This context highlights a significant incentive structure. If the WNBA were to fold or experience a prolonged lockout, top talent already has a safety net. With Unrivaled established as an alternative revenue stream, the veterans leading these negotiations stand to lose the least if talks break down entirely.
And Women's National Basketball Players Association have reached an agreement on a moratorium for league business, sources told ESPN on Monday. The moratorium is necessary because the sides failed to reach an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement or an extension of the previous one by Friday's deadline. The sides continue to negotiate on a new CBA amid what's become a bitter impasse as they work toward what both sides acknowledge will be a transformative deal. They remain far apart on several key issues, including chiefly what a revenue-sharing system should look like. Now, is it really bitter on the owner side? Probably not. They think they're going above and beyond with some of the things that they're willing to give them. Going from 9% revenue sharing to 15%. These crazy players want 30% of revenue sharing before expenses. Absolutely not.
The moratorium began after both sides missed a Friday deadline to either agree on a new CBA or extend the previous one. In practical terms, this put the league in status quo, meaning the working conditions of the expired agreement technically remain in effect. The issue is that while teams were ready to extend qualifying offers and core designations under the old salary structure, players refused to sign anything while negotiations over a new system with massive pay increases continue. As a result, all but 2 veterans sat out free agency entirely, betting that ownership would cave first, pressured by the need to start the 2025 season on time and the union's demand for 30% of revenue. But the owners aren't budging either, knowing the math doesn't work. 15% of revenue is already a huge jump from 9%, and 30% before expenses is unsustainable for a league that has never turned a profit. It's this reality that has made conversations about replacement players start to sound less far-fetched.
Better. Because they think that they're owed something that they haven't earned. The players are bitter. The players have things to lose. Well, not all of the players, but the players in the negotiating rooms. Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. They would love it if WNBA folds. Unrivaled gets some players. Maybe that league turns to 5-on-5. They already see a future for Unrivaled. Breanna Stewart earlier this weekend said, oh man, it's so hard to compartmentalize. I mean, after the games, then I got to go and take emails and phone calls and take places on this and take places on that. Wouldn't it just be easier if that league didn't exist anymore? That's what she's saying to herself. We move on. With the previous deal expired, the sides entered a period called status quo, in which the working conditions of the former CBA are maintained. WNBA front offices were told last week that teams should prepare to extend qualifying offers and core designations under the expired agreement, sources said. However, it was widely expected that players would not want to sign contracts, while a new salary system with expected massive increases in compensation is still being bargained. All but two of the league's veterans and free agents this offseason in anticipation of a new CBA. The moratorium will halt those initial stages of free agency in which teams would seek to deliver qualifying offers and core designations to players.
What sets the situation apart from previous WNBA controversies is that it's no longer about media coverage, respect, or recognition. It's about cold, hard business reality. The owners saw what happened in 2020. Indiana Fever games sold out arenas that had been half empty the year before, and over 1.5 million new fans tuned in specifically for Caitlin Clark. Ratings data confirmed the trend, showing that games without Clark drew only a fraction of the viewership compared to games with her. From this, the owners made a calculated decision. The league's value is not evenly distributed across the roster. It's concentrated in maybe 5 to 8 players who truly move the needle. That list includes Caitlin Clark, Aya Wilson, the reigning MVP, Sabrina Ionescu with her New York market appeal, Angel Reese, who drives engagement even amid controversy, and Paige Bickers, the incoming number 1 draft pick. The owners are asking a critical question. If they paid these elite players top-tier salaries while filling the rest of the roster with replacement-level talent, would casual fans even notice? Would attendance or ratings suffer?
You want to play in the WNBA? You could be our first player. Call Sophie. Hey, Sophie, you want to come play in the WNBA? You'll be our first player. What are the steps to just tear that up and start new? Seriously, fans won't care. Let me rephrase. The fans that actually move the needle won't care. The fans that help the Indiana Fever sell out won't care. The over 1.5 million fans that came to the league when Caitlin Clark joined, they won't care. At this point, many of those folks are saying, just lock them out. End this nonsense. Shut this league down. We are officially at the point where this bargaining and negotiating, it's turned into a pileup on the side of the road that people are now paying attention to. They don't really have an invested interest in it. They're just paying attention to because it's a pileup on the side of the road.
This is where the argument gets uncomfortable, but necessary. The 1.5 million fans who showed up in 2024 didn't come for the league. They came for Caitlin Clark. The data makes this clear. Fever home games averaged 23,000 fans, while road games featuring Indiana saw attendance spikes of 40 to 60% compared to the previous season. Games without Clark or the Fever returned to typical WNBA numbers, respectable but not transformative. The playoffs reinforce this pattern. The finals between New York and Minnesota drew solid ratings by WNBA standards, but much of that was driven by curiosity and the momentum Clark built during the regular season. Once she was eliminated, A significant portion of the casual audience disappeared. They weren't sticking around for the basketball. They came for her. So when someone suggests starting fresh with just the stars, it's not about disrespecting veterans. It's about reading the market. The established players pushing for 30% revenue share haven't earned it through ratings or attendance, whereas Caitlin Clark earned it in just 6 months.
It's losing steam. It's losing steam by the day. If interest levels were here when Caitlin Clark got here, dude, they're here. They might even be off the screen now. If interest levels were here when Caitlin Clark arrived, they've fallen off so fast. People don't even want to watch anything that doesn't have to do with Caitlin Clark. No one cares about Unrivaled. No one cared about the playoffs. No one cared about the finals. Oh, but the ratings. Yeah, but the ratings were inflated. Nobody paid attention. You look at Caitlin Clark games, you look at Indiana Fever games, and you look at non-Caitlin Clark games. There it is. Said it. Right there. So the league has lost momentum, and it's all because of the players. Unwillingness to negotiate. Unwillingness to compromise. The owners have done their part. And as far as I'm concerned, move on without the old guard. Hire whatever attorney you can to make that possible and just do it. If not, shut it down.
What no one is saying out loud, but everyone is thinking, is that the league is losing momentum by the day. Interest peaked when Caitlin Clark was playing meaningful games in August and September 2024. But by the time the finals came around in October, casual fans had already moved on. When Unrivaled launched in January 2025, the 3-on-3 format failed to capture that audience. The fans who showed up for Clark didn't follow Stewart and Ionescu to a different league. Now it's March 2025, approaching the April draft, and there's still no CBA agreement, no free agency movement, and no clarity on whether the season will start on time. The curious onlookers have driven past. They aren't slowing down. If this lockout extends into summer or the 2025 season is delayed or canceled, the WNBA might not recover. Not because the basketball isn't good, but because the window of mainstream attention is brutally short, and 6 months have already been wasted on a labor dispute that makes both sides look petty. Players think they have leverage because the league needs them, but the owners have leverage too. They can absorb losses for another year. They've been doing it for 25 years, while most players cannot. The negotiators represent the elite tier with options. Stewart has Unrivaled. Almec has international deals and endorsements. They can push for 30% revenue sharing from a position of relative security, while middle and lower tier players watch their careers evaporate. Owners understand this. Recognizing the union is fractured and rank-and-file players are desperate. They're letting pressure build, betting the players will eventually accept the 15% offer. But the wild card is what happens if they don't. If Stewart and Almec believe they can outlast the owners and force a better deal, the league could fold or turn to replacement players. Starting fresh with just Caitlin Clark, Aya Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Angel Reese, and Paige Bickers, supplemented by college free agents and overseas players willing to cross the picket line, might even be viable from a pure business perspective. Because revenue is driven by star power, not depth. The veterans demanding 30% are betting the league can't function without them. But the owners may conclude that credibility matters less than profitability, and that keeping Clark happy is the real key. This is a nuclear option, and the fact it's being seriously discussed shows how broken the negotiations have become. Both sides are bitter, feel disrespected, and refuse meaningful compromise. The outcome is likely one of three. The players accept 15%, and the season starts on time. The owners cave to 30% and risk unsustainable financial obligations leading to contraction within 5 years. Or a prolonged lockout destroys the momentum Clark built and sets the lead back a decade. The third option would be catastrophic. If 2025 is lost, the casual audience may never return, and the progress of 2024 could evaporate entirely. The question now is urgent. If you were running the WNBA, would you give the players 30% and hope revenue growth justifies it? Hold firm at 15% and risk a lockout? Or consider the nuclear option and rebuild around the 5 players who actually drive fan interest. One of these decisions will be made in the coming weeks, and it will determine whether this league exists in its current form 5 years from now.